Vivian Brooks had one hand on the glass door, gently steadying an elderly client who looked overwhelmed, when a sharp voice cut across the office. "Step away from him, right now." The chatter stopped. Every head turned. Amanda Pierce strode across the lobby in heels that echoed against the polished floor, her expression already hard with disapproval. She didn't lower her voice. "You changed this client's appointment without supervisor approval," she announced. "That's a direct violation of company policy." The elderly man looked confused. She was only trying to. "Sir," Amanda interrupted, "we'll handle this." Vivian released the man's arm and met Amanda's eyes without flinching. "He'd already been waiting nearly 2 hours," Vivian said calmly. "There was an opening. Helping him immediately seemed like the right decision." "The right decision?" Amanda laughed just loudly enough for the surrounding employees to hear. "You don't get to decide what's right. Temporary analysts follow instructions." A few people exchanged uncomfortable glances. Amanda folded her arms. "You don't fit here." The words hung in the air. Then came the worst part. Security. 2 officers approached. Vivian didn't resist. She simply picked up her notebook. As Amanda escorted her through the center of the office, whispers followed. "I knew she'd mess up eventually." She acted like she knew better than everyone. "Guess she's gone." Someone even snickered. Vivian never looked back. Outside the building, the summer air felt strangely quiet after the public humiliation inside. One of the security officers handed Vivian a small envelope containing her visitor badge. "I'm sorry it ended this way," he said carefully. Vivian offered him a polite smile. "You were doing your job." She glanced toward the towering glass headquarters she had spent years dreaming about before anyone else believed in the idea. Thousands of employees now worked inside that building. Not one of them had recognized her. That had been the point. For nearly a month, Vivian had worked there under a temporary assignment, wearing ordinary business clothes, eating lunch with entry-level staff, answering to supervisors young enough to have started their careers after she'd stepped away from daily leadership. She had listened far more than she spoke. She'd watched talented employees hesitate before helping customers. She'd watched managers care more about reports than people. And this morning had confirmed the question she had quietly carried into the company. Had the culture she built survived, or had something replaced it? Inside the lobby, Amanda was probably congratulating herself. After all, she'd made an example of an employee who had ignored procedure. No one knew that the procedure Amanda quoted had once been written by Vivian herself, and that Amanda had twisted its meaning beyond recognition. A longtime employee named Daniel had watched the entire scene unfold without laughing. Their eyes had met for only a second. His expression hadn't been amusement. It had been concern. Vivian reached into her handbag, removed her phone, and made a single call. The line connected immediately. "This is Chairman Ellis's office." Vivian spoke in the same calm tone she'd maintained all morning. "Please tell the board tomorrow's evaluation begins immediately." She ended the call before another word was spoken. Behind the glass walls of the headquarters, nobody yet realized what that single phone call was about to set in motion. Vivian slipped her phone back into her handbag and walked toward the parking garage without looking back at the headquarters. The building behind her carried the company logo she had sketched years earlier on a legal pad at her kitchen table. Back then, the logo had stood for one simple promise: solve problems first. Somewhere along the way, that promise had become follow procedures first. Those weren't the same thing. As she unlocked her car, she paused before getting inside. "This wasn't supposed to end like this," she murmured. Not because she had been escorted out. Because Amanda had never once stopped to ask why an employee would choose to help a customer instead of protecting a schedule. That question alone would have revealed everything. Over the previous 4 weeks, Vivian had quietly blended into the operations department as a temporary analyst. She had arrived early. She had listened during meetings. She had asked ordinary questions. And she had watched. Every day revealed another small crack. A customer service representative once whispered to a coworker, "Don't solve it now. Amanda wants every exception approved." The customer waited another 40 minutes. Another afternoon, a new employee found a faster way to process urgent client requests. Instead of being thanked, he was told never to improvise again. "We're paid to follow procedure," his supervisor said. The young man never suggested another improvement. Vivian wrote another note in the small notebook she carried everywhere. Not names. Patterns. The problems weren't isolated. Managers celebrated perfect compliance reports during weekly meetings. No one mentioned customer satisfaction. No one discussed employees leaving. When complaints arrived, supervisors debated which department should take responsibility instead of fixing the issue itself. Vivian sat quietly through those conversations. No one noticed her writing. No one asked why a temporary analyst seemed so interested in company culture. Years earlier, she'd personally written the company's first leadership guide. The opening page contained only 3 principles. Solve problems first. Respect every person. Never embarrass an employee in public. She could still remember arguing for that 3rd rule. People don't become better because they're humiliated, she'd told her original leadership team. They become afraid. Now she'd watched a supervisor publicly shame employees almost every week, including herself. That evening, as Vivian left the building after another ordinary shift, days before the incident that ended with her being escorted out, someone called her name from across the parking lot. "Vivian, wait." She turned. Daniel hurried over, glancing behind him before speaking. "I'm sorry." Vivian tilted her head. "For what?" "For what Amanda does." He lowered his voice. "She wasn't always like this, but once she became supervisor, everything changed." Vivian remained silent. Daniel continued. "If someone asks a question during meetings, she calls them unprepared. If someone makes a mistake, she corrects them in front of everyone. And if someone actually fixes a problem without asking," he gave a humorless laugh, "that's somehow worse." Vivian studied him carefully. "Why?" "Because she says initiative looks like disrespect." Daniel looked exhausted. "Not physically. Emotionally. We've lost 6 really good employees this year," he admitted. "They didn't leave because of the work. They left because nobody wanted to work under constant fear." Vivian folded her arms. "Did anyone report it?" Daniel nodded once. "More than once. To senior leadership. They never hear the whole story." "What do you mean?" He looked back toward the building. "Amanda controls every report that goes upstairs. The executives only hear what Amanda wants them to hear." For the first time that evening, Vivian's expression changed. Not surprise. Recognition. She thanked Daniel for his honesty. He smiled faintly. "I don't know why I told you all this." Vivian did. Because after weeks of silence, someone had finally believed another person would actually listen. She simply said, "Take care of yourself, Daniel." Then she walked away, without revealing who she really was. As Daniel watched her leave, one question lingered in both their minds. If senior leadership had never seen the truth, who had been making sure they never would? The next morning, Amanda walked into the weekly staff meeting with a confidence that immediately filled the room. She placed a folder on the conference table and smiled. "I want to begin with a reminder," she said. "Policies only work when everyone follows them." Several employees exchanged uneasy glances. Daniel kept his eyes on the table. Amanda continued. "As many of you witnessed yesterday, I had to remove an employee who deliberately ignored company procedure. She didn't say Vivian's name. She didn't have to. Everyone knew who she meant. If we tolerate people who think they're above the rules, Amanda said, this company loses its standards. A few supervisors nodded. Several employees gave hesitant applause. Others remained completely silent. Amanda noticed the silence, but interpreted it differently. She believed they were impressed. After the meeting, Amanda headed straight to Human Resources carrying the incident report. I need the termination finalized before lunch, she said, sliding the paperwork across the desk. HR specialist Melissa opened the employee file. Let's just process the separation. She frowned. That's strange. Amanda folded her arms. What is? Melissa clicked through the system again. The file is restricted. Amanda laughed. Restricted? She's a temporary analyst. I know. Melissa tried again. It says executive authorization required before any employment action. Amanda shook her head. Someone checked the wrong box. Melissa wasn't convinced. I've never seen this level of restriction. Amanda reached across the desk and tapped the folder. Then fix it. I can't override executive security. Amanda sighed dramatically. It's obviously a clerical error. Melissa hesitated. I'll submit a request. No, Amanda replied firmly. Process it today. I legally can't. Amanda left the office visibly annoyed, convinced HR had become unnecessarily cautious. Meanwhile, conversation quietly spread across the operations floor. At the coffee station, 2 employees lowered their voices. Did you notice something odd about Vivian? What do you mean? The second week she was here, I saw Vice President Collins stop and shake her hand. You never mentioned that. I assumed they'd work together somewhere. Another employee joined them. I remember something too. What? She asked me when the company stopped using the original leadership handbook. You remember that? Yeah, she knew details about the company's first office that aren't even in orientation. Daniel looked up from his coffee. Maybe she worked here years ago. Then why come back as a temp? Nobody had an answer. For the first time, curiosity replaced gossip. Amanda wasn't interested in curiosity. She gathered her supervisors that afternoon. I've heard people discussing yesterday. The room became quiet. I don't want rumors. She looked around the table. What happened was simple. Someone challenged authority. I enforced policy. And that's exactly how leadership works. Nobody argued. Nobody agreed. Most simply looked down at their notebooks. Just then, every computer in the room chimed at once. Phones buzzed. Tablets lit up. Employees across every department stopped what they were doing. A company-wide calendar invitation had just appeared. Mandatory executive meeting. Attendance required. No explanation. No agenda. At the bottom of the invitation was something no one had seen in years. Sent directly from the chairman's office. Amanda stared at the screen. For the first time since escorting Vivian out of the building. She felt a flicker of uncertainty. By 9 o'clock the next morning, employees from every department were streaming toward the company's main auditorium. The atmosphere felt different. People spoke in hushed voices. No one knew why the chairman's office had called an all-hands meeting without warning. I've been here 8 years, one employee whispered. I've never seen this happen. Me neither. Daniel found a seat near the middle of the room and looked around. Operations staff. Customer support. HR. Finance. Even department heads, who rarely left the executive floor, were taking seats. Something significant was about to happen. Amanda entered with the confidence she had worn all week. She straightened her blazer and nodded to several managers as though expecting congratulations. "I imagine this is about tightening compliance," she said to one supervisor. He forced a smile. "Maybe." Amanda looked toward the stage. If they're recognizing departments that enforce policy consistently, operations should be first. She sounded certain. After all, she had demonstrated decisive leadership. Or so she believed. A quiet murmur spread across the auditorium as senior executives began filing in. The chief financial officer, the chief operating officer, the general counsel. Then several members of the board of directors entered together. Employees instinctively sat up straighter. Board members almost never attended company-wide meetings. Daniel noticed Amanda's confident expression soften ever so slightly. Then he followed her gaze. Beside the chairman's seat sat another chair. Unlike the others, it bore no nameplate. It remained empty. Across the room, Melissa from HR was staring at her tablet. She refreshed Vivian's personnel record again. Nothing. The file had disappeared completely. Not archived. Not deleted. Gone. She leaned toward a colleague. "I can't access her employment record anymore." Her colleague frowned. "What do you mean?" "It isn't in the system. Maybe it's updating it." Melissa slowly shook her head. "No. This is something else." Near the auditorium doors stood the same two security officers who had escorted Vivian from the building the previous afternoon. One of them approached a facilities manager. "We were instructed to remain here until the meeting concludes." The manager looked surprised. "By who?" "The chairman's office." The officers exchanged puzzled glances. They had expected an ordinary shift. Instead, they'd been personally assigned to this meeting. Amanda leaned toward another supervisor. "This is becoming unnecessarily dramatic." Before the supervisor could respond, the chairman walked to the podium. The room immediately fell silent. He looked across the audience before speaking. "Good morning. Thank you all for attending on such short notice." He paused. "For the past month, this company has undergone a workplace evaluation." Confused whispers spread through the auditorium. Amanda frowned. Workplace evaluation. She had assumed recent reports focused on productivity, not culture. The chairman continued. "This evaluation was designed to observe how policies were applied, how employees were treated, and whether our leadership still reflected the principles on which this company was built." Amanda's stomach tightened. No one had mentioned an evaluation. Certainly not one like this. Without thinking, she stood. "If this concerns the employee I disciplined yesterday," she began, "I can fully explain my decision. She knowingly violated company." The chairman gently raised a hand. "Please remain seated, Ms. Pierce." His calm interruption carried more authority than any raised voice. Amanda slowly sat down. For the first time, she looked genuinely uncertain. The auditorium doors opened. Every conversation stopped. Vivian Brooks walked inside. She wasn't entering from the audience. She was coming through the executive entrance beside the stage. She wore the same calm expression she had worn while being escorted out of the building. Only this time, no one stopped her. As she approached the front of the room, something extraordinary happened. Every member of the board of directors stood. So did every senior executive. The entire front row rose in complete silence. Amanda stared, unable to understand what she was seeing. Daniel's eyes widened. Melissa from HR slowly lowered her tablet. The two security officers instinctively stepped aside. The chairman smiled warmly as Vivian reached the stage. He looked out across the silent auditorium. "There is someone," he said, "you all need to properly recognize." Vivian took one final step toward the podium. Vivian stopped beside the podium. The silence inside the auditorium was so complete that the faint hum of the air conditioning seemed unusually loud. The chairman waited a moment before speaking. "I would like everyone to meet Ms. Vivian Brooks." He turned toward her with genuine respect. "Founder of this company." A wave of stunned whispers rolled through the room. "Our majority shareholder." More whispers. "And the author of the leadership principles upon which this company was built." The whispers stopped altogether. Amanda's face drained of color. Daniel stared at Vivian, replaying every conversation they'd had over the past month. The quiet woman who had listened more than she spoke. The temporary analyst who had eaten lunch in the cafeteria. The employee Amanda had marched out of the building. She had founded the company. The chairman continued. Several months ago, despite strong financial performance, employee retention began declining. Customer satisfaction also showed subtle but consistent deterioration. A presentation appeared on the large screen behind him. Graphs. Exit interview summaries. Customer feedback trends. "Numbers told us something was wrong," he said, "but numbers couldn't tell us why." He looked toward Vivian. "So the board approved an independent cultural evaluation." Vivian stepped to the microphone. "I requested that no one outside the board know my identity." Her voice remained calm. "If employees changed their behavior because they recognized me, the evaluation would be meaningless." She looked across the audience. "I wanted to experience this company exactly as every new employee experiences it." Several people lowered their eyes. Vivian continued. "I wasn't evaluating productivity. I wasn't evaluating revenue. I was evaluating leadership." The room remained silent. "I wanted to know one thing. Do our leaders solve problems?" She paused. "Or do they protect themselves?" No one answered. "They're supposed to solve problems." Amanda slowly stood. "I was enforcing company policy." Her voice sounded far less confident than it had the previous morning. "I followed the employee handbook exactly." Vivian nodded politely. "I'm glad you mentioned the handbook." She opened a leather portfolio resting on the podium. From inside, she removed an older binder with worn corners. Several longtime executives immediately recognized it. The original leadership handbook. Vivian placed it on the podium. "I wrote it." She opened to a bookmarked page. Section 4. She read aloud. "Whenever established procedures conflict with immediate customer care, supervisors are expected to exercise sound judgment in favor of serving the customer." She looked directly at Amanda. The policy was never designed to prevent employees from helping people. It was written to encourage responsible judgment. Amanda swallowed. Vivian continued. "What changed?" She lifted another document. It wasn't the handbook. It was how leadership chose to interpret it. The chairman addressed the audience again. "During this evaluation, Ms. Brooks documented repeated examples of public humiliation, suppressed employee concerns, delayed customer resolutions, and management practices inconsistent with our founding principles." Melissa from HR quietly stood. "I can confirm we've also identified multiple employee complaints that never reached executive review." Several executives exchanged troubled looks. The chief operating officer spoke next. "We trusted our reporting systems." He glanced toward Amanda. "We now understand those systems failed because people within them failed." Amanda looked around the room. "I never intended to hurt anyone." Vivian answered gently. "I believe that." Amanda looked surprised. "But intentions don't erase outcomes." She gestured toward the employees seated throughout the auditorium. "When people become afraid to ask questions, they stop improving. When they're afraid to admit mistakes, they hide problems. And when they're publicly embarrassed, they stop trusting leadership." Vivian let those words settle. Fear creates obedience. It never creates excellence. The chairman announced the board's decision. Effective immediately, Amanda Pierce is relieved of all supervisory responsibilities, pending formal review. Amanda closed her eyes briefly. No one applauded. This wasn't a victory anyone celebrated. It was accountability. The chairman continued. Additional management reviews will begin today. Any leader found suppressing employee concerns or encouraging retaliation will face disciplinary action. Several department heads shifted uneasily. The message was unmistakable. This wasn't about one supervisor. It was about rebuilding trust. Vivian stepped away from the podium and faced the employees instead of the executives. I don't want today to become a story about punishment. Her eyes found Daniel. I want it to become a story about courage. Daniel looked genuinely startled. You apologized when you had nothing to gain. She smiled. Integrity often whispers, but real leadership notices. The vice president of operations stood. Daniel, we'd like you to join our leadership development program. The room turned toward him. He blinked in disbelief. I don't know what to say. Just keep doing what you've already been doing, Vivian replied. Tell the truth. Over the following months, the company changed in ways employees could actually feel. Managers attended leadership coaching before supervising teams again. Customer service policies were rewritten using the original handbook as their guide. Anonymous reporting channels were strengthened so concerns reached executives without interference. Former employees who had resigned received invitations to return if they wished. Some accepted. Many did. Employee turnover steadily declined. Customer satisfaction steadily climbed. Not because new software had been installed, because trust had been rebuilt. One autumn morning, employees gathered in the lobby. A small bronze plaque had been mounted beside the entrance. Vivian stood quietly near the back, while a junior employee unveiled it. The inscription read, "Policies exist to protect people, not power." No applause had been requested. None was needed. Employees simply stood reading the words. Many smiled. Some nodded. Everyone understood why they mattered. Months later, Vivian visited the headquarters again without any announcement. She wore ordinary business clothes. She walked through the lobby unnoticed. A customer asked for directions. Before Vivian could answer, a young employee stepped forward with a warm smile. "I've got you." Another manager thanked an employee for solving a difficult problem without waiting for approval. No one raised their voice. No one was embarrassed in front of others. Vivian smiled to herself. She quietly walked back toward the exit. As she stepped outside, she glanced once more at the building she had created, not with pride in its success, but with confidence that its people were finally living its purpose again.